good evening to all of you. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome once again for this interactive session with Mr. R. Srinivasan, past president BCIC, who has co-authored a book on Above and Beyond: How to Build Impactful Business. Everybody wins. So we're going to hear from him. Before that, I will request our president to share his thoughts and inputs to take it forward, sir. So over to you, President, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Prithvi. Good evening, friends. Hearty welcome to this very, very special keynote addressed by Mr. R. Srinivasan, our beloved guru, the former chairman of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, former chairman of CII, and former chairman and president of IMTMA. And he doesn't need any introduction. He is a veteran. The name, the field is there. And this book, he shared the book with me a few months back. Then that time I could not read because I had some personal challenges. But once I started reading that book, the e-book is available. I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, you cannot, remove your eyes without completing that book. And such a great book. Every corporate leader, every student, every faculty member, every Indian should have that. So wants to shine, excel, and succeed in not only in corporate life. I would say it's a life workshop. And he talks from his heart and synergy of great three people: Mr. Srinivasan, Mr. Mugundan, and Mr. Udupa. And all the three are veteran in their own areas. And interestingly, they are from VIDIA. The VIDIA is a great organization. In fact, whenever I used to visit VIDIA several years back, 20 years back, 30 years back, the culture I always remember, it always sounds in my ears. But I see Mr. Srinivasan taking food in the general canteen with all other workers, sitting with them. And he was a person who walked the talk. And the entire VIDIA, I could see right from the machine shop to the SPM, the culture was something phenomenal. And whenever I visited VIDIA, I had a feeling that, I was in some different place. We were full of happiness, creativity, innovation, and teamwork. And that was the culture he had set up. And interestingly, these three gentlemen, all from VIDIA, and Mr. Srinivasan, he doesn't need any introduction. He is in the board of more than 20 companies. He is 25 plus organizations. And he has trained more than 1,000 people across many corporate leaders. And he has been called the professional guru. And Mr. Other two gentlemen, they're all leaders in their own fields. Mr. Mugundan, he is again a great leader. He was again from VIDIA. He worked in several fields and he was in HR marketing. Mr. Udupa is again an HR leader. So just to briefly introduce you, these three gentlemen, they have really shared their knowledge, wisdom to create this book, which is a masterpiece, I would say. I don't want to be in between you and Mr. Srinivasan because it should come from the horse's mouth. And at the end of the session, there is a Q&A session. And we can listen to Mr. Srinivasan, then you can raise your questions. Then we can have an interactive session. So with this introduction, I leave this to Mr. Srinivasan. Sir, it's over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Mr. Parashuraman. Thank you very much indeed for giving us an opportunity to come and make this presentation to the members of the BCIC. Before I start, I'd just like to have a brief word when Mr. Mukundan is here with me, and he is helping me to sort of share this presentation because technically I'm not able to handle these sharing and managing the slides and stuff like that. So he is here to help me, and I'm thankful for that. Mukundan is also he's an engineer and is a professional with over 35 years of experience, and he is primarily has been in sales and marketing and the customer-facing processes, application engineering and whatever. And he has trained over 100,000 people in customer-facing operations in various big organizations He has trained the entire team at Coffee Day. He and his team, Coffee Day, then Samsonite and Levi and Jockey, all the big brands, name them, many of them he has trained. So I'm happy he's here to help me out. I would like to maybe talk for about 25-30 minutes and maybe leave the rest for the question and answer, because I believe a discussion would be more meaningful than a mere monologue from my side. I'll just try to present an outline of our thoughts and what we would like to communicate. And I will look forward to listening from you about your own questions and your own views and experiences. We are indeed now passing through very difficult times, and we are facing any number of challenges. For example, let us consider what is a successful company. After all of us are working in some organization, and we want to achieve some success, and we want to make a mark, we want to lead, we want to leave a stamp on the society. But what has been considered as a successful company, we have generally followed the Western management thought, and over the last 70 years, we have followed more or less what is called as Milton Friedman's doctrine, that the main job of a business is to deliver profits and increase the shareholder value. This has been the doctrine which has been sort of dictating or showing us the way of how to run an organization. But this approach, in our view, has had many unintended consequences. I'm sure you'll agree. And one of the most obvious ones being is that we have created a very, very unequal society, with the rich getting richer and the poor not being lifted out of their misery. And this has been accentuated, particularly in the last 10-15 years, much more than ever before. And there is a worldwide call to question this entire capitalistic approach. The other unintended consequences is the damage to the planet. I think we have sort of created a considerable amount of damage. With the result, we are facing the consequences of climate change. And in bigger cities like Delhi and Beijing or whatever, people are finding it even difficult to get fresh air to breathe. So the pandemic has accentuated the problem further. It has completely put the world upside down. It has impacted the way we work, the way we live. And this one video conference is also a shining example. Instead of sitting in an office around a conference table and a meeting or in a conference room and making this presentation, we are able to make this presentation, and you are able to sort of interact with us from wherever you are. So the entire world, the way we work, is changed. We also need to rethink about the priorities. The nameless, faceless, casual worker on the shop floor or the construction worker has created a great more or less stopped the entire activity by walking away home, fearing for his own life and safety. So that is the condition we had created. When there was a threat, the first thing people had to flee for safety. And suddenly, lives have become more important than livelihood. So this is a big change we have been confronted with by this pandemic, which makes us stop and rethink what our priorities really are. We have been talking about what is called the VUCA world, the volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. But at this point in time, we are really facing it. Many of us went through a crisis where we didn't know what is going to happen the next day, leave alone the next month or the next year. So and as we mentioned, the pandemic has also completely changed the way we look at things. And so is it causing only a disruption, or are there also opportunities coming out of this situation? It's a question. For every problem, they say there is more than one solution, and for every dark cloud, there is a silver lining. So are there opportunities which are available to us, and we can go ahead? Many things are happening around us. I think all of us, you will agree, whether it is a disruption, causing disruption in very many fields, whether it is electric vehicles, which is supposed to come in and change the entire automotive scene, or if it is the IoT, or automation, Uberization, if you want to call it, digitization, which is impacting all the way we work and live. This is creating a great deal of changes. And based on all this, the expectations of our customers is changing. Today, the China plus one strategy is being looked at by the entire global corporations. The supply chain, they do not want to rely on China. They want looking for alternate sources. And many huge investments are happening in our own country. And the question is, are we agile and efficient enough to understand what the customers want? And are we able to be able to cash in on those opportunities and meet the requirements of the changing market? You see, all this is creating such an amount of disruption that each one of us sometimes, we feel overwhelmed. We feel that how to meet these challenges? How do I face this and find solutions and move ahead? How do I handle these things successfully? And many times we feel that we are left alone. We find that the people in many organizations are here, that they find that the team along with them is either unable or unwilling to come forward and accept these challenges and help the CEO or the owner or the business head to go forward. So the question again is the people. How many of are we able to get our people ready to stand up to the challenges, take up the challenges, or are they really equipped to handle that? That's a very big question that is staring in front of us. So the question really is, are the people skilled and empowered enough to lead ourselves into the future? Do they feel empowered? I think that's the key word, because in our system, unfortunately today it is hierarchical and most of it is top down. And for anything and everything, there's a great deal of centralization in our organizations where people look up to the leader for every decision. So there is a need to empower the people, to ignite the passion in people, because ultimately it is people who drive ideas, and we have to get more people to take on the leadership position. Leadership position meaning take on a responsibility and able to do the right things and help you get the right results. Amidst all this, the Prime Minister has given a call for Atmanirbhar Bharat, to become really self-reliant in anything and everything. I think this is a huge challenge. And many people have become dependent on input from outside India. And now suddenly if we have to do that, it is a huge challenge. So there are many questions which are confronting us at this point in time. And I'm sure there are no simple answers, and we cannot provide answers to you in a session, let us say, of a discussion slated for about 60 minutes today. But perhaps this is a time for us to reflect. We seem to have really hit, in my view, a glass wall. The proverbial glass ceiling, if you like. We're able to see many opportunities in front of us, but we are unable to grasp them, exploit them, and use them and help those and cash in on those opportunities. So maybe we should turn this glass wall into a mirror, and we should look inwards. We should reflect and say what all needs to change. If you look at the world outside today, almost all organizations are struggling to attract and retain talent. On the one hand, the people who join the organization, the companies are offering huge pay packages, swanky offices, and whatnot. And if you look at it, there is a dichotomy in the interest. On the one hand, as an organization, we are looking to maximize the profit, the shareholder value, the brand, the market position, or whatever. And the individual is looking for his own purse maximization, you want to call it. You expect fast growth. And many of the younger people are impatient. They want instant gratification. They are also looking for personal growth. And over and above anything else, they are looking for self-identity. They want to be recognized as individuals and appreciated. The culture, a question of saying, look here, I will play, you just perform, does not seem to bridge the gap. The people are looking for some meaning and fulfillment, and mere money alone does not seem to satisfy them. So what are the organizations doing? On the one hand, look at what they're doing. Swanky offices, better facilities, multi-cuisine cafes, whatever, a lot of varied incentive trips and motivational talks and outbound training and whatever we're trying to do. On the other hand, the young person who comes today is looking for a meaningful job. He wants to make a contribution. He wants to get some amount of fulfillment. There is a shift between the perception of the people from whatever we were used to in the earlier years, and this is creating a big dichotomy or a gap in between what we offer and what the people expect. So let us look for a moment at how an organization evolves. I think all of us have gone through, but if we start from the very beginning, the whole thing starts, let us say, with the promoter or the owner or an idea. You know, there's an idea. There's an idea which sort of needs to be tested, and which is sort of. So what does he do? So an organization gets formed. They try to test out the idea, try to validate the idea. Many startups today are doing that in Bangalore. We have many of them. They first want to validate and test the idea. Once the idea is tested and there's a reasonable amount of response, the next is to stabilize the thing. What he wants to do, the need is to increase the sales, get more customer buy-in, and grow and develop the business. So we just add people, we increase the size, we stabilize the operations, and we get into what is called a stabilizing phase. Then comes the growth phase. That is the critical phase in which the business really gets organized. You are getting result-oriented, and you want to engage more and more people. There is focus on the customer, there is focus on profits, there is focus on cost. We are all very busy. But at this critical stage, the top leadership really does not have much time for the people. The entire people issues are left to the HR department. There are very competent HR professionals who do the job. They try to do that in a very critical and a professional way. But this is where it stands. But it fails to keep the people satisfied. So many people leave. So what do? We hire people from outside, lateral hiring as it is known. But we find that creates its own problems because the people who come in are not able to adjust to the culture within the organization. And so all the efforts we put in for the HR department to train the people and to get them engaged, somehow or other it meets only with a partial success, and many times it is not even successful. However, in this situation, what happens really is that some companies do the right things. You know, they're able to somehow create a vision. They're able to look at a big picture. They're able to motivate their team and get a certain amount of alignment. They look at processes. They get into the I'm sorry for that. I don't know who did that. So they try to motivate the people. They put in the best processes and things like that, and they move to the next stage. What I would like to call as the excellence phase. Where we start getting organized. We have various systems. We have various processes. We look at how to improve the processes. We go into the Six Sigma and all those issues. We want to become more efficient. We want to achieve the levels of excellence. Some companies get into that phase. Many of you perhaps are in this phase. But what happens is that very soon, this question of setting targets and annual business plans and continuous improvement initiatives and things like that, people get really tired of them. They are not very comfortable merely chasing targets and to improve the top line and the bottom line day in and day out, year in and year out. The Americans for this, to counter this, have been introducing various new initiatives from time to time. New labels are put in, one initiative, the other is rolled out, so that just to keep the things fresh and keep the people engaged and motivated. But that does not seem to work because it's the flavor of the month and the people get tired. So the organization at this point of time get into some type of a stagnation mode. It's the same thing, we roll over. The business cycles very much depend not just on our initial effort, and there is not much of new initiatives and activities happening, and we very much depend on the boom and bust cycles of the economy. If there's the economy, there is a boom, business grows, and otherwise we follow the bust cycle. But keeping the people motivated, alive is becoming a big challenge. But in this situation, if you look at it, there are some organizations which stand out. Take, for example, the Tatas. We talk about Tata Steel, they may not be good in terms of aggressive or whatever, but they have been very steady and they have been very sound. And they have, Tata Steel, as you all know, perhaps started out with the objective not just to make steel, but one of the main objectives is how to make the country build a strong nation. Recently Ratan Tata's pronouncement that nobody will be sort of sacked or lose his job on account of this COVID was a shining example of his commitment to his own people. If you look at how the people at the Taj Mahal Hotel in Bombay behaved when the 26/11 catastrophe happened in Bombay, that is legendary. People risked their own lives only to make sure that their customers were safety. And it is many people have studied it, and they were not able to understand what made that people with that amount of commitment and motivation stand in their workplaces and even risk their lives. Similarly, you've got other organizations. Take, for example, L&T. L&T is now pursuing what is called Imagineering. They are trying to build some iconic projects around the world and creating a great sense, or some huge projects which they execute in a very nice fashion, and they're able to provide a challenge and an excitement to the people working for them. If you go to IKEA, for example, they are not looking primarily at profit. Also, another good organization worldwide, from a multinational, if I may cite them, they want to make the people's life better. This is what they are working with, and they are able to keep a very high level of motivation among their people working worldwide. So, what really happens is when people are struggling with this phase of excellence, some degree of excellence and all that, we believe there is one more level beyond that. There is a stage beyond the excellence we talked about. Here the leaders are not talking merely about the profits, but they are able to talk of some larger objective, some larger purpose. Please come back. So in this phase, if you are able to do that, the people who are working for the project somehow are able to find much more meaning and relevance to their own personal. They are not just working for a salary. They are working for something which is meaningful, and they are proud to belong to such an organization. Such brands are able to, attract the appreciation not just from their employees and customers, but even from public at large. So some people here, by looking at a purpose far beyond profits and the top or bottom line, are able to create a culture in which the people work together as a team. Mr. Parasuraman mentioned about what he saw in Vidya. He said there was a Vidya team at work. Somehow or other, it was fortunate for us, we were able to create an environment where the people felt part and parcel of it as one. It was their organization. They were able to stand up and they were able to contribute and commit. We are drawing not just from that one experience, but we have experienced that with multiple organizations we have been associated with. I would say at least with about 40, 50 organizations where my co-authors and I have interacted with closely. I found this type of experience. When you're able to rise above the level of mere business objectives, you're able to put a much higher objective, and you're able to do that. You're able to lift the organization and the performance levels to a totally different level. Now, if I were to look at from the people side, there are enough surveys around the world to say that the Gallup polls are one of the most well-known and well-respected polls. They just show that only 15% of the people working in organizations today are engaged. That's really shocking. Only 15% are really there with their heart and mind. 85% of the people are there in the organization. They are there physically. They are doing their jobs, but their heart and mind is not there. And at any point of time and every point of time, they want to be told what to do. There is really no internal motivation for them to look at the issues, look at the problem, look for improvement, and to improve themselves and their organization. So let us look at what do really people want. So all of you know about the Maslow's theory of hierarchy of expectations and needs. So similarly, what we've tried to put together from more or less similar, but we're looking at it from a different perspective. When an employee is joining an organization, initially, of course, he wants a good pay packet. So they were looking for financial safety, but also he wants a good working environment, which is physical safety. We call this physical and financial safety at a very base level. The next, very soon, once he settled down in this job, he looks for some mental stimulation. He's not ready to keep on doing the same mundane job day in and day out. He wants something, learn more. He wants to try out some things. He wants guidance. He wants coaching. He wants to learn. He wants to improve his capability. And it falls on the leadership to create this type of mental stimulation and give him the necessary path for him to sort of develop as an individual, not just do the job, but develop as a human being and as a capable professional in his own job. Once this is over, that is again not enough. The next level is that the person cares for identity. Every human here wants to be treated with dignity and respect. And secondly, he wants the opportunity where he can exhibit his skills, and he wants to have a sense of belonging. He wants to belong. He wants to be able to sort of interact with the leadership, communicate his ideas, and be part and parcel of the entire activity. So he's looking for what is called the psychological safety. So this is what we call psychological safety, and this is the one which creates the emotional bond. And the emotional bond is one directly relevant for the morale of the organization. If there is an emotional connect, the morale of the organization is good. If the morale is good, then the engagement is good, and you get good performance. You get good ideas. You get good participation. You get good sharing of the finding solutions to the challenges what an organization faces. But even this, in our view, is not the final thing. Because what ultimately people want is they want to be free. They want empowerment. They want to be able to free to do test out their ideas, do something. Even if they fail, they do not like to be reprimanded. They want to have that freedom. So this is where we call the psychic safety. The absence of fear, the freedom to contribute. This unleashes the potential, the creativity, and the innovation in the people, so that they are able to contribute, become part and parcel of the organization. If you may go back to my own personal example at BDA and all that, many of our diversification projects away from the cutting tool all came from people in various parts of the company. It could be a sales engineer out in the field facing a customer, communicating a customer's problem to us, or it could be some other employee in the field saying that, why can't we try out this idea? We encourage the people to contribute. And then when that happens, there's a free exchange of ideas, not just top down, but also bottom up. And we're able to create a whole lot of innovative opportunities for the business to develop and grow. Next one. The CEO's challenges does not stop here. Today the expectation is that every organization should behave like a corporate citizen. So there are huge expectations from the government, from the regulatory bodies, and so on the one hand, he faces these challenges in addition. In addition to that, he has to make sure that the organization is sustaining and is able to grow, because the aspirations of people are growing. If there is no growth, the organization really gets into difficulties, because in our situation, cost keeps increasing, and for the organization to prosper, a minimum growth, in my experience, a minimum growth of 10% per annum was required just to sustain the organization. So to do all these things, we need a proper purpose, which is an objective far beyond the business objectives, and to create a culture which will enable that, which will nourish that, and help people to deliver. Then we have this question of values, which are very important. Of course, today, business ethics is becoming more or less a compulsion. The law expects that all your standards are ethical, and there is and more so in public companies, there is a disclosure and there is a transparency in what you do, and you not just conform to the law, but you also have to disclose what you're doing. And in whatever you do, there is a certain amount of fairness and equity. You can't just do something from your own selfish business interest, but there has got to be equity. Even this interest of the minority, the stakeholder has got to be taken care of. And these are all the business ethics. And this is one set of issues what we would like to put in front of you. The other issue is the basic human values. The basic human values are simple things: honesty, respect, care. I think these are some of the things. For example, I have learned from my grandmother, and I'm sure that you must have heard that from your own grandmother as well. We imbibed this from our own families and from our own uncles and aunts and at school when we were kids. These are basic human values. Nobody wants to be treated just because he is a casual worker. He does not want to be treated like less than a human being. He has his own dignity. And this is some of the things which as a culture has got to come into an organization. Then on top of this, we have what we would like to propound as dharmic values. These are values which are a little, and I'd like to clarify here that dharma has got nothing to do with religion. You may at best say that dharma is just doing the right thing. Maybe there is a certain amount of spirituality in it, but today more and more you find that businesses if they have got to be sound and rise above a particular standard, they have to adopt these principles. They have to be of service. They have to be of use. They must be of relevance to the community. So they must be able to deliver some common good. So dharmic values drive the spirit of service, and it requires from the leadership a certain amount of compassion for issues, whether it is the employees or whether it's the vendors or whether it's the customers or anybody whom you deal with. And it also requires a certain amount of empathy, being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes and find the right solutions and deal with that transaction in the best manner possible. So how do these things all add up? I've been talking about some diverse things and all that. We believe that the organization to be impactful rests on 7 pillars. One of the best pillars, one of the most important pillars is the business paradigm. The leadership business paradigm. This is the which impacts the entire business. And then we have the people paradigm of the leadership, and I'll talk about it a little later. And these impact the business status and the business expectations. Apart from these, we have 3 core pillars on which the organization rests. One is the purpose, the main purpose beyond business objectives, the vision for the organization, what you want to do, and if you are doing it on a basis of sound holistic values. Let me elaborate this a little bit. The business paradigm, depending on the stage of the business, we talked about the 4 or 5 stages. It impacts the business. If you are in a growth phase, you have to really look for an excellence phase. And if you're in an excellence phase, you want to move up, you have to look at some more meaningful purpose and the larger objectives. The entire responsibility rests with the leadership. So the leadership paradigm on how we want to run the business naturally affects the status in which the business is finding itself, whether it's stabilizing, whether it's growing, or whether it's excellence, or whether it's really able to make an impact on the society. Similarly, the next one is the people paradigm. How does the leader look at his people? Are they mere human resources? We look upon human resources. Unfortunately, this term has crept into our management vocabulary. We treat them as a resource, as if you treat a machine or a raw material or money as a resource. We also treat people as a resource. We don't treat them as people. We are not able to somehow. We have missed looking at people as people and treat them with the necessary respect and care, what I talked about a little earlier. Then if we come to the vision, most of the companies today have a vision. ISO 9000 mandates that the companies have a vision. Even otherwise, many companies have put a vision, but most of the visions are limited to business objectives like market leadership, market share, customer satisfaction, maybe technology excellence, maybe bottom line. I think but a limited vision in our view limits the impact of the organization. What we require is a comprehensive vision. A comprehensive vision, today we talk about a 3P vision, the planet, the people, and the profit. The profit comes last. So the planet and the people necessarily should take a higher order of priority than profits. This is what is known as the 3P vision, and sometimes people call it as the ESG vision. The ESG has come in as a new terminology into management language. But we believe that on top of that, we need a 4th P, a purpose. If the organization is able to find a purpose, why the leader must definitely answer the question, why does the organization exist? It cannot just be for the sake of profit. I think that's a very, very unsatisfactory answer. Why does the organization exist? I think this is one of the most difficult questions, and I believe that we have not spent enough time talking about it. We are so busy dealing with our own business objective and a business challenge. Of course, there are any number of challenges. There is no time to think about all these things. But if one were serious to look at a business and say, how do I look at it in the long term? I think each one of businesses requires a purpose. Why it is doing what it is doing. I think the leaders must be able to find an answer. And this is a big challenge. It requires quite an amount of churn in our thinking to identify a purpose. But once you are able to identify a purpose, and once you are able to roll it out with the right leadership paradigm and perspectives, I believe that we are on the road to building a very successful organization and making it very, very impactful. These things, what I talked about, the leadership paradigm around the people, the larger purpose, and the holistic values. This, we believe, creates the culture. Culture is something which is very difficult to define. It's not something which you can touch and feel. But as the late Professor Sumantra Ghoshal once mentioned that culture is the smell of the place. You see, when you walk into an organization, you're able to smell what type of an organization it is. That is culture. And that, I believe, is created by the leadership paradigm around people. If people are able to deal with it respectfully, treating them every issue in a serious manner with a certain amount of empathy, compassion, and more importantly, respect and sincerity of larger purpose, based on some values, and we are able to create a nourishing culture which can transform the employees to become really entrepreneurs. They really become entrepreneurs. Each one becomes a CEO in his own true sense of the word, and he is able to contribute to the success and growth of the organization. All this I'm talking about is not just a topic for, let us say, a conference room or a seminar or of academic value. The Forbes India data of 2018 shows that for culturally aligned companies, the revenues are 4 times, revenue and EBITDA are 4 times that of an organization which is not culturally aligned. Culture is not something which is desirable, but culture is also makes, if you look at it purely from a business sense, it is essential, it is sound policy and a sound approach to be created, to be nurtured, and to be developed by the leadership. So if you really want to build impactful businesses, I think creating this culture and igniting the greatness in the people is absolutely necessary. This is what I would like to stop here, and I would look forward to sort of some questions from you, which perhaps I could expand a little bit more wherever you think, or if you differ from me, we can possibly discuss it.
So thank you so much. I think fantastic, sir. You have put it in a beautiful macro picture. But I always keep telling, when you look at Earth from horizontal distance, somebody said it is rectangular or spherical. But when you look at Earth from 1,000 kilometers, you're able to see the beautiful blue ball. You should be able to put it in your pocket. So whatever we learned in MBA, I think you could bring that 3-year curriculum in less than 30 minutes. To put it very short. Now I ask the audience to ask the questions. I think it's a great opportunity. Please feel free to ask any questions you may. Mr. Lakshmi?
Sorry, I joined later, but it's never too late to always meet Mr. Srinivasan.
Hi, Lakshmi. How are you?
All well, sir.
Mr. President, you can take over perhaps. Lakshmi.
Yeah, sir, one question that is coming from most of the people when I ask them today. See, the organizations, there are a lot of stresses for youngsters. They have to perform and they have to put merit. As you rightly said, they're completely lost in the battle. Means they're always busy trying to firefighting mode. So the leaders are also equally busy. In fact, as you rightly said, they always look at the bottom line and top line. So to start with, how an organization should think, like as a leader, what is the starting point of changing this kind of, what to say, we are getting into a kind of catch-22 situation.
So as you
without a purpose. So where an organization, typically 90% of the organizations sail in the same phase. And rightly said, the OEE is only 15%. I call it as the human OEE. Overall equipment effectiveness is less than 15%, as you rightly said. So where does a leader should think at this point, sir? In fact,
I believe it starts in the leadership's mind. The leader must be very, very clear about what he wants to do. And there are 2 distinct tracks on which the leader has got to operate. One, I believe, is the business paradigm. We cannot do that. It's a question of a long-range planning, your business planning, your strategies, your rolling out, your deployment. That is part of the business. But that cannot take 100% of your time. I believe that is not more than 50% of your time. 50% of your effort can be in that domain. And if we have the right people, this is easily possible. The rest of the 50% must be dealing with the softer issues of the company, which is the people. To create leaders at the different levels of the organization to understand where the organization is going. And for that, you need a very, very strong aligning focus. You need one lodestar. Stephen Covey talks about the North Star for the individual. It is also, we need one lodestar, and that is the purpose. Why are we doing what we are doing? Why are we struggling day in and day out, 12, 14 hours a day? Why are we doing this? Is it just to meet the top line and the bottom line? Is it just to meet the customer? Yes, customer we have to satisfy, no doubt about it. But just satisfying the customer by what is only by product cost and delivery and full-time on OTIF and things like that. Are they the only things in life? I think it goes something beyond that. And that is where I believe if the company has got to look at the long term, it has got to start in the leadership's mind. The leader has, and for that to roll out, he has to build along with him a small team, a coterie, if you like, who will have like-minded people who share the things, and you're able to think about it, crystallize your thoughts and actions, and roll them out. It is very important to have a purpose. And if organizations do not have a purpose, the vision, to my mind, serves partially. It does not serve the purpose fully. Because vision, again, is, I would say, 90% of it is business. Business. The what of it and not the how of it. How is done by people. And we have to get the people motivated. The 15% engagement, if it improves, let us say to even 50%, you will have 3 times the output.
Absolutely, sir. In fact, it reminds me of the Dabbawalas. Once I had an interview with the Dabbawalas in Mumbai, and interestingly, the Dabbawalas, you know that they have been maintaining one of the best quality standards in the world.
The best 6 months.
I was amazed, and I was fascinated to see them. You know, in the busy trains of Mumbai, they times the place, and they're operating in a single-digit ppm, 20-30 ppm. And what was motivating them? In fact, they were getting those days 1,000 rupees salary. And it's amazing, actually, in the kind of teamwork, the culture, the kind of life they enjoyed, the bhajans at the end of the day. And if some person makes a mistake, they don't go to the management. They take the responsibility and they sort it out.
Right,
and
that is ownership. That's ownership, yes.
Amazing, sir. It reminds me of that. I think the leadership and the kind of ownership.
But that comes from a single-minded purpose. If you are clear about why we are doing what we are doing, we are good quality. It goes something beyond that.
Purpose is much beyond. Sir, one more question coming from our senior former Secretary General, Mr. Bhatnagar, Raju Bhatnagar. His question is, sir, most organizations continue to be evaluated on a quarter-on-quarter basis for shareholder returns or market evaluation. Investments in people in the long term. How does one square the circle?
You see, it is a question of clearly getting an alignment. If there is no alignment at the top, let us say between the CEO and the board, if there is no clarity, if the board is only looking at the business purpose, so it is very important. These are all topics, you know, once we said that quality is a boardroom topic. Similarly, for an organization, what is the purpose and what is really there to achieve is a boardroom topic, and that there's got to be an agreement at the top. If there is no agreement, it is extremely difficult to roll any of these things out. And I believe most of the problems start there. There is no agreement. There is no appreciation. And I believe there is not enough discussion, dialogue around this topic. I believe once you raise this question to any responsible board, no board will tell us that, look here, no, I don't care for this, get with profit for this quarter. I don't think any board will ask for that. So it is a question of clarifying this as an organization. This is why it is very important. That as an organization, we are very, very clear and agreed, and there's an agreement at the top of what our long-term purpose is. And we must have the confidence, the clarity, and the confidence that once we achieve our purpose, profits will follow. The Forbes study which I presented to you shows that if I'm able to get a culturally aligned company, I can get multiples of my returns, what I'm getting today. I think it is really an investment for the mid-term or the long term, in case we are not finding ourselves in a comfortable position. But getting that alignment, that agreement, and that understanding at the top is of absolute importance.
Well said, sir. Well said, sir. Sir, in fact, one more question. Of course, in similar lines of what you have answered, motivation is very important for people to be engaged. Unfortunately, money is the biggest motivator. So how do we draw the line?
You see, today we come and say that, look at the young people are coming there and work only for money. And at the slightest, what you call, higher pay package offered by another company, they jump.
Yes, sir.
And we many times blame the young generation, saying that, look at, they are after money and they are not very committed and they don't have value and all that. I would like my co-author, Mr. Mukund, here to explain this to you for a minute. If you don't mind, he will answer this question on my behalf.
Good evening, everybody.
Very good evening, sir.
Actually, there is a very big shift which is developing between the people who are above 40 and below 40. Above 40, we call them the Gen X and the baby boomers. That means people who have been born before 1980. Now, most of us who have been baby boomers or Gen X, we have existed in a survival mentality because, you know, those days things were not easy to get. You could not even get a good car. So we had to grab everything. And our leadership was developed around, you know, ambition and profit and, you know, profiteering. But people we always considered as important in those days, but as an economic value add. But the youngsters are really differing today. And that is why they shift jobs so much. And research tells us that most of the things which we could not get those days, they have been provided to them today. Most people who got a college degree, they got basic things worked out for them by their fathers, by their grandfathers. They don't believe in scarcity. They want to more belonging. They want to contribute. They want to feel good that they're doing something good for the company. This divide has unfortunately led to what is the problem today. And if you have not generated enough young managers in the system, you will find old managers always complaining about the young people. So you need to ignite more leaderships with a larger purpose, with the right culture imbibed in them by the senior member. If this divide can be broken, every problem can be solved. It's not just salary which is motivating the young people.
It is said, no, people don't leave companies, they leave bad managers. So it's the experience what a young person gets when he joins the organization the first couple of years, how he is treated. Is he treated with respect? Is he treated as a person who can add value? Is he given an opportunity to add value? If you challenge the people and get them engaged in the job, I think money recedes to a secondary importance. The challenge and the ability to be involved, be committed to contribute, I believe will overtake. But in most cases in our established organizations, we don't provide that opportunity. We want the youngster to learn. He is a trainee. He has to be trained for years before he can become a manager. And that is where the problem is. I think that today's people are all, they are very capable. They are very competent. You throw them into the water, they know how to swim. So that is what we should try, in my view.
Sir, one more question that's coming. Interestingly, in an organization, the pyramid, the top person is the key person and he drives the organization. And his one direction completely changes the organization both ways. But many times there is a big gap in the top person's thinking. And there are lots of excellence happening at the bottom of the pyramid. So most of the times the resources go unnoticed or the talents go unnoticed. This is one of the common problems in many organizations. We are blind to value systems. We are blind to realities of organizational growth. So is there any way to change this?
That is where the leadership team is important. If the leadership team is if the organization does not have a top leadership team which is aligned, which is cohesive and together, it is absolutely important for the top teams to sort of align and mix and respect and accept and trust each other. Trust is a very important aspect among the top leadership team. And many often the rivalry is encouraged, protecting turf is encouraged. But here again, all these things in my view are lost because we are only looking at the top and the bottom line and we are not looking at a larger purpose. We are not, if somebody is going off the track, in case we had a larger purpose, we can always bring him back to track by saying, somebody can hold the mirror and say, hey, are we doing the right thing? You see, in many organizations, that is where the young generation, if something is going wrong, they want to be able to put up their hand and come and say, hey, this is not right. Do we have that freedom in our organizations? Do we allow people to say that something is not good? Come back and give you a negative feedback? I think this is very much an important, essential characteristic of a leadership. We are not able to develop that. And that is a big problem, I agree. But there it is a personal quality of the leader. He has to think for himself. Is he happy in his life working, slogging away like this just for the, I don't know, he may make millions of rupees or dollars or whatever. But my question is, at the end of the day, is he going to be happy? Is he known for that? Ultimately, what does he want? It's also the question of the leader understanding what is his purpose. If he's not clear about his own purpose, I think all what we are talking about will go to waste. It will all only be sort of dissipated and diminished, and we don't get anywhere. It depends on the leadership. What does one want? What do we want in our lives? This is where the Dharmic principles, we have to rise. In our scriptures and all that, we talk about a Raja Rishi. the Raja has got to behave like a rishi. He has to behave without self-interest, looking for truth and what is right. That is the responsibility of a leadership. And it's the leadership is not just the CEO, but anybody in a senior leadership position. It starts there, and we have to build that culture first. And I
Sir,
believe India have a terrific advantage because we can live back. This is what our ethos is. The Indian ethos is that of service, not selfishness and self-aggrandizement and self-power and money and wealth.
Fantastic, sir. In fact, sir, this leadership team is a wonderful idea. In fact, most of the organizations, of course, they make or break, depends on the leadership. But I think that Tata is one example, what you said, the leadership team they identify and they're able to drive the organization. I think definitely this is a very, very valuable thought, sir. And sir, you talked about psychic safety. I love that word, psychic safety. In fact, when I was in Google, I was amazed to see a lot of youngsters sitting on the treetop in shorts, not even in shoes and slippers, and they were doing the chat on creativity innovation. Interestingly, I'm told 80% of those breakthrough ideas come from those kind of sitting on the tree type of meetings with a cup of coffee or whatever. I think how to get that kind of democratic freedom. That is where Indian organizations have a typical problem. Like, your thoughts are completely streamlined. You have a lot of systems in place. Systems are very good, but how to break the mental barriers? I think organizations fail. The creativity and innovation doesn't come out because we have kind of layers of controls. I think this is the bigger challenge that is facing a nation like India in a typical organization. So how do you break that? Normally it's not easy, but of course leadership is very, very important. But how do people come out of that kind of a controlled atmosphere to kind of an open, frank, innovative atmosphere where knowledge is free? Of course, leadership is definitely a very important point.
The leadership thing, it is not very difficult. If you, for example, I was also what you would call a driver or an alpha male manager for quite some part of my life. Till somebody external came and held a mirror back to me and told me in video that I said, why am I not able to build a cohesive team? Why can't I take people? Why should everything come to me? Was my dilemma at that point in time. And that was a catharsis moment for me personally, if I'm allowed to share that experience. Somebody from outside, we got fortunate. It was more my fortune than by design. I got an outside person who come and held up a mirror up to me and said, this is where your problem is. You are the problem. That the coin dropped. I said, there something is wrong. And that sent into me into a series of reflections and discussions with my own top leadership to say, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? I encouraged them to give me a feedback. And we talked about it. And we said, what should we be doing as leaders? What should be our responsibility for not just for the organization, because we have thousands of families who are depending on the company. And not just that, but it's also a question of trying to say, we took upon ourselves to say, we have a commitment to improve the productivity of the nation. That was my larger purpose. We said the productivity of our customers is our job. This was the purpose we had identified pretty early. It was more by accident. It was not by design. The word purpose was not known in the management jargon at that point in time. But it happened to us there. I do not know. It is more by providence, luck, or my own middle-class values strongly, which I carried with me. I don't know. But this is what it is. If you're able to identify a purpose beyond the purpose and you're able to think back, connect back to the purpose from time to time, you get onto the path. You may stray from it, but the purpose pulls you back to the path. So it is very, very important that you identify a purpose. Please define why you are doing what you are doing. Not the what and the how. We may have excellence in the how, but if the why is not very clear, I think the excellence gets you nowhere.
So thank you, sir. And one last question to you. In your career in Vidya, you have been the longest managing director of Vidya, a company which was turned around and today one of the most sought companies. In fact, the people who left Vidya also, we could see they're all great leaders. But whomever I see, Mr. Krishnan of Tegu Tech or Mr. Amjad or Mr. BFW, Mr. Shinde, Mr. Chandar, I think they're all great leaders. Even today, I love to talk to them with a value system. I think the magic you created is something amazing. Sir, while creating this kind of a team, we had also a lot of challenges. I also know that VIDIA was one of the toughest unions we had.
Yes.
So the mindset change was not easy for you.
Oh.
So how did you bring this change and what kind of challenges you had faced, sir?
If you may share we had a very interesting experience. For example, we called all the union leaders together and we put a team of about 10 union leaders and 10 managers together in a room with the external facilitator to say, you come and tell me why we are doing what we are doing. What is our purpose? That was the challenge thrown at them. And the result was absolutely surprising. They all wanted the same thing for the company. They wanted the company to contribute. They want the people to be treated with a certain amount of respect. They wanted people to have freedom. They said, we will contribute. We'll behave with responsibility. We will take the ownership. You'll be amazed. It was an amazing experience I had with the union leadership. We had the courage to get the union leaders and say, come on, let's find a common purpose. And they agreed that they were with us. Again, of course, there were some aberrations here and there. Some outside influence used to come and say, you should get some 10,000 rupees more salary and all that. And they went on a strike. That's a different story. But we were able to manage them because we brought them back on track. We had to deal with this. Aberrations happen, disturbances happen, but we must stay unwaveringly committed to our purpose. And we find that once we are steadfast and if the leader is able to walk the talk, the rest of the people follow.
Brilliant, sir. In fact, I recollect one of my visits to VIDIA when I was an young engineer. I was just walking to the canteen and we were just talking who is the managing director of this great organization. And I was told that he is sitting there, you can see, talking to the operator on the general canteen. I think that day I realized the kind of, it literally sparked me actually. For a minute, I had goosebumps on me because Mr. Srinivasan, the managing director, was sitting and talking to the operator like any other person. And I think that is where the extraordinary quality of being ordinary, I think you displayed. Hats off to you, sir. And today, I think your book and your talk has been outstanding, I would say. I would also request all the Bangalore Chamber members to own this book. It is a personal gift, I would say a life-changing experience. I would say it's a great gift you can possess. You can put it under your pillow. And we are very, very thankful to you, sir, for a wonderful session. Maybe I think 1 hour is too short a time. I would have loved to have a 2-hour session. But definitely we look forward to your continuous guidance and support going forward. I'm sure this book should ignite the lives of millions of youth across the world. And I'm sure not only youth, I think for any person who would like to, do something, bring a change in his life. On behalf of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, sir, we are very grateful and thankful to you for the wonderful session. I also thank Mr. Mukundan and Mr. Uduppa, I think, for partnering and making this book a wonderful masterpiece. And I am sure this should be a kind of a must curriculum in all the business schools. Thank you very much. And
a small appreciation for R. Srinivasan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think this was a standing ovation. So thank you for inspiring us. The wordings are thank you for inspiring us, sir, not participation. And thank you, sir. We are not able to give you a physical memento. So thank you.
No. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Our heart is with you and we will reach it to you.
If this message could be communicated to a larger number of people, that is the best reward I can, best thanks I could get.
No, I would like to put this speech also and your presentation also with your permission in our website, so that you can first of all reach 800 plus members, and you would like to percolate it in the YouTube and other channels as well.
You are most welcome.
Audience.
You are most welcome.
Most welcome.
Thank you, sir. We are very honored and you made our evening. So
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for your participation.
Thanks a lot.